Hi folks, hope you're okay today. It's good to be with you. We're just looking at Albert Barnes' notes on the whole Bible. He's an old Bible teacher and a good Bible teacher. I'll link to his commentaries, they're really good. On the book of Galatians he says, the situation in Galatia and the character of the people. Galatia was a province of Asia Minor, having Pontus on the east and Bithynia and Paphlagonia north, Cappadocia and Phrygia south and Phrygia west. It goes, the name Galatia is derived from the word Gaul, and was given to it because it had been conquered by the Gauls, who having subdued the country settled in it. They were mixed with various Grecian families, and the country was also called Gallo-Graecia. He goes on, they retained their original Gaulish language as late as 5th century, as appears from the testimony of Jerome, who says that their dialect was nearly the same as that of Treveri. The Galatians, like the inhabitants of the surrounding country, were pagans, and their religion was of a gross and debasing kind. They are said to have worshipped the mother of the gods under the name of Adististus, and Calamachus in his hymns calls them a foolish people, and Hilary himself a Gaul calls them Gallus imbeciles, expressions which say Karma may well excuse Paul's addressing them as foolish. The possessors of Galatia were of three different nations or tribes of Gauls, the Tolistobai, the Tromai, and the Tectosagai. There are imperial medals extant on which these names are found. It is of some importance to bear in mind these distinctions. It is possible that while Peter was making converts in one part of Galatia, the Apostle Paul was in another. The Gauls are mentioned by ancient historians as a tall, valiant people. They went nearly naked, and their arms were only a sword and a buckler. Impetuosity of their attack, it is said, was irresistible, and hence they became so formidable, and was usually so victorious. The date of the epistle. Many have supposed that this was the first epistle Paul wrote. Tertullian maintained this, and Epiphanius also. Theodoret and others suppose it was written at Rome, and was consequently written near the close of the life of Paul, and was one of the last epistles. Lightfoot supposes also that it was written from Rome, and that it was among the first which Paul wrote there. Chrysostom says that the epistle was written before that to the Romans. Louis Capulus, Wistus, and Wall suppose that it was written from Ephesus, after the apostle had been a second time in Galatia. This also was the opinion of Pearson, who placed in the book in the year 57 AD. While there he see these opinions examined in Lardner as quoted above. Lardner himself supposed that it was written from Corinth about the year 52 AD, or the beginning of the year 53 AD. McKnight supposed it was written from Antioch, etc. So you can read upon the date. It's an early date anyway, I think. The design of the epistle. It is easy to discern from the epistle itself the following circumstances exist in the churches of Galatia: that they had been at first devotedly attached to the Apostle Paul, and had received his commands and instructions with implicit confidence when he was among them. Galatians 4:14-15, and that which was a trial to you in my bodily condition you did not despise or loathe, but you received me as an angel of God, as Christ Jesus himself, were then in that sense of blessing you had. For I bear you witness that if possible you would have plucked out your eyes and given them to me. Galatians 1:6, I am amazed that you are so quickly deserting him who called you by the grace of Christ for a different gospel. Next, that they had been perverted from the doctrine which had taught them soon after he had left them. I am amazed that you are so quickly deserting him who called you by the grace, etc. Next, that this had been done by persons who were of Jewish origin, who insisted on the observance of the rites of the Jewish religion. 4. That they claimed to have come directly from Jerusalem, and to have derived their views of religion and their authority from the apostles there. 5. That they taught the apostles was inferior to Paul was inferior to the apostles there, that he had been called more recently into the apostolic office, that the apostles at Jerusalem must be regarded as the source of authority in the Christian church, and that therefore the teaching of Paul should yield to that which was derived directly from Jerusalem. 6. That the laws of Moses were binding and were necessary in order to justification, that the rite of circumcision especially was a binding obligation, and is probable, Galatians 12, that they had prevailed on many Galatians to be circumcised. Galatians 6:12, those who desire to make a good showing in the flesh try to compel you to be circumcised, simply so that they will not be persecuted at the cross of Christ. That they had prevailed on many of the Galatians to be circumcised, and certain that they had induced them to observe the Jewish festivals. You observe days and months and seasons and years, Galatians 4:10. It should seem also that they urged that Paul himself had changed his views since he had been among the Galatians, and now maintained the necessity of circumcision. But I, brethren, if I still preach circumcision, why am I still persecuted? Then the stumbling block of the cross has been abolished, Galatians 5:11. Perhaps they alleged this, but from undoubted fact that Paul, when at Jerusalem, had complied with some of the customs of the ritual. Acts 21:26. Then Paul took the men, and the next day, purifying himself along with them, went into the temple, giving notice of the completion of the days of purification, until the sacrifice was offered for each of them. 8. That they urged that all the promises of God were made to Abraham, and that whoever would partake of these promises must be circumcised as Abraham was. Paul's answer: therefore be sure that it is those who are of faith who are sons of Abraham, Galatians 3:7. That in consequence, number 9, of the promulgation of these views, that great dissension had risen in the church, and strife for an unhappy nature existed, greatly contrary to the spirit which should be manifested by those who bore the name. The first object, therefore, was to show that he had received this commission as an apostle directly from God. Second, the great object, therefore, was to show the real nature and design of Lord Moses, and to prove that the peculiar rites of Mosaic ritual, especially the rite of circumcision, was not necessary to justification and salvation. This point he shows in the following way, by showing that those who lived before Christ, and especially Abraham, were in fact justified not by obedience to the ritual law of Moses, but by faith in the promises of God, Galatians 3:19-29. In view of this, he reproves the Galatians for having so readily fallen in the observance of these customs, Galatians 4:9-21. And for this view of design of the Mosaic law and its tendency, he illustrates by an allegory drawn from case of Hagar, Galatians 4:21-31. Tell me, you who want to be under the law, do you not listen to the law? For it is written, after that Abraham had 2 sons, one by the bondwoman, one by the free woman. But the son by the bondwoman was born according to the flesh, and the son of the free woman through the promises. This is an allegory speaking of, for these women are the 2 covenants, one proceeding from Mount Sinai, bearing children who are to be slaves. She is Hagar. Now this is Hagar, Mount Sinai. Hagar corresponds to the present Jerusalem, for she is always a slavery to her children. The design of the whole epistle, therefore, is to state and defend the true doctrine of justification, and to show that it did not depend on the observance of the laws. I hope this has been a blessing to you. I'll link to Barnes' notes on Galatians. Excellent notes. Enjoy.